The next session of Parliament begins today, and of course, each party comes with a focused agenda, but it's public support and sentiment that is what really matters.
And for a look at what we can expect out of the House of Commons in the coming weeks, we're now joined by CTV News' political commentator, Scott Reid. Scott, it's good to see you. Let's start with a pretty pointed speech from Justin Trudeau as the Liberals kicked off their caucus retreat in Ottawa last week. Tons of political jabs there, all of them directed at Pierre Poilievre, and it certainly had the Conservatives firing back online. What does that say about how the Liberals are feeling heading into this session?
It feels they need to do things differently than they did in 2023. If you look at how the arc of last year went politically for the government, it was about as gruesome as it could be. They were sort of neck and neck in the polls until summer, and then they fell 10, 15, sometimes 20 points behind Pierre Poilievre. And so I think the reason you're hearing that sharper tone from the Prime Minister is that he realizes he's going to have to consistently contrast his policies, his idea, his performance, his experience, his record with that of Poilievre. They're going to have to paint a picture of Pierre Poilievre for Canadians, or they're not going to like how this election turns out. So I think that's really what you're seeing. And so I expect the temperature to rise today, this week, and this entire session.
Okay, and Scott, speaking of, what are some big ticket items you are expecting from this session?
Well, we're going to continue to see a focus on the economy, bread and butter economics, the cost of living, inflation. Even as the Bank of Canada signals that it's going to start to lower interest rates, maybe that loosens a little bit of the pressure on people. You're going to see the Conservatives continue to pound away, make the argument that it's harder and harder to get by, services are worse, and taxes are higher, and they're going to hammer on the carbon tax, and they're going to hammer on the cost of living, and you're going to have to see the government either shift the focus, take the debate to someplace else, or rebut it better. But in 2023, the government simply did not do a good enough job of taking control of the economic discussion in the country. And I'll tell you this much, when you're an 8-9-year-old government, you are not going to win if you are not winning on the economy.
You talked about the temperature rising in the House of Commons, and this might be why the Liberals are going into this winter session trailing the Conservatives in the polls. Will that really be the backdrop of this session, Scott?
Politically, it is. Of course, Canadians don't care that much about the horse race. They tend to be turned off by the partisanship, but they are affected by it. So when they hear over and over and over again, Pierre Poilievre is a mega politician, just like those guys to the south. And as we watch the U.S. presidential election unfold, Donald Trump starts to blot out the sun in the sky more and more often. The Liberals are hoping they can make that connection, make that association between our Conservatives and what's been happening with the Republicans south of the border. So again, I come back to it. You're going to see a real huge intensification of the partisanship, of the pointedness, and of the pure politics.
Let's look at the confidence and supply agreement between the Liberals and NDP. How will the two parties work together? I mean, where could there be disagreement? And how will the Conservatives shape what happens?
Well, the Conservatives have already started to brand this thing. They are hammering away on it. They say it's a costly coalition between them. So they're connecting that political action between the NDP and the Liberals with an economic consequence for Canadians. It costs you money. The Liberals, of course, have no choice. They must maintain this relationship because with the polls as they are, the Liberals cannot afford to have an election. If they have an election in 2024, it is all but certain they will lose. So by March, they have to produce something with respect to pharmacare. I'm not sure that's going to resonate with a lot of middle-class Canadians, a lot of the people that they need to get votes from, but they're going to have to do it in order to fulfill the bargain with the NDP, keep that promise and keep that coalition alive. And so you're going to see the Liberals just sort of navigate those waters. And to me, it's how do they balance the need to maintain that policy agreement with the NDP, continue to fulfill those policies in the House, but still appeal to centrist, mainstream Canadians who are not worried about big programs, so they're worried about bread and butter economic issues.
All right, Scott Reid, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks so much, as always, for your analysis. Good chatting with you.
Thanks, Scott.
Have a great day, guys.